every filmmaker faces this problem. It's how to find ideas, and not just any idea, good ideas. That simple challenge and learning how to navigate it will elevate your work. And I've realized that good ideas have two aspects. First, they're discovered, they're sort of found, but then they need to be built. So the question beckons, where do you start to find those ideas, and then how do you build it? Well, in this video, I'm gonna break down my process. There's a few stages to it of how I first discover an idea and then craft and mold it into a project. This is the same process that I've used for all of my documentaries I've released on my YouTube channel, and it's something you can repeat in your career. Specifically, I'm going to take you through the process of my film Labor and Love that I just released, that I shot on the Nikon ZR. So let's jump into this. And this video today is sponsored by Frameset. So as I mentioned, there's 5 steps I'm going to take you through. So the first place I start with when it comes to the ideas, this is the first stage, step number 1, is through observation. Observation can occur in many different arenas. It can be talking to people, it can be just your everyday life as you're walking around, taking notes, writing things. Like this morning when I left the gym, I saw this presumably homeless individual laying down, reading a book in this Pizza Hut. And just the fact that he was reading a novel and he had it propped up seemed to be different. I took a photo without his consent, sorry brother. But just being aware of the world around you is important. The other place to do this is through conversation. Call up people who have different lived experiences than your own. Now, in this case, for this Nikon project, this is where I started. I called a lot of different producers and directors and spoke to the co-founder of AOD, Mike, and tried to work through some ideas. Hey, do you know anyone? Is there any athletes you meet? And that wasn't producing the ideas I needed. So I went to the next stage, which for me is boredom. This is creating a space to let your mind wander. And this is an actual discipline for creatives. I think it's so important for you to get into a place where you can discover new ideas, the fresh stages where the clay is still wet. So how do I do that? Well, I will go for a run, so I'm not on my phone, but I do play music sometimes. But if I really want to get inspired, I'll put on like my favorite cinematic soundtracks. And that's where I begin to let my mind wander. I go into new recesses of it. In the case of this film, I went on a nice, long, slow run, so I had as much time away from technology. And on the last hill, that's when I began to think of my friends, the Snare family, Ben and Megan, who live in Wisconsin. I thought, hey, they have a farm. Hey, Ben's a pretty good photographer, and I've seen some pretty, moody, inspirational images from there. Maybe I could film something about their place, about their kids, about their space. And that's where the idea began. Once I kind of have some of those basic ideas, one place I will go to is just Frameset. I click this little button in the top corner here and I get to their homepage. Every time you refresh it, it's a whole new set of images you can scroll through. And some of these may spark interest. This is a quick way to kind of rip around the world and see many different people's cinematic perspectives. Stage 2, this is where you need to find the core theme. Another way of describing that is calling it the question or the tension in your film. So now I had this farm. What's the next stage? Well, I got on the phone with Ben and I began asking him questions. You need to nail down this tension, this core idea, this theme, because this is what will give your film breadth. This is why when people watched Labor and Love, they spoke about it moving them. And this is the part of the film that I stress most. So talking to Ben, asking him lots of questions about what was going on, he said one thing. He said, people think I'm a little bit strict on my kids, but I push them to do hard things because I know it makes them way more enjoyable to be around, and it's gonna help them be more confident. Bam, there's an idea. Kids are too soft these days. And for me, I really love the book Anxious Generation. It's why I encourage you to read. This is why as a creative, don't just stay on your phone. Get out there, read, talk to people. I've been a really big fan of Jonathan Haidt, and his writings ever since he did The Coddling of the American Mind. And that idea that kids are too soft was directly injected into this project. Again, there's a piece of tension. This is in all my films. You think of Kill or Be Killed, the question was, what happens when your dream is crushed? Joel was an MMA guy, broke his back. Now what does he do? He has this incredible body that he was using for fighting. So he became a firefighter. My film Chase It From the South, there was one core question, which is how far will you take the chase? Where does responsibility and passion collide? This is the crux of your film. So I identified that with this project. I now have the observation, a farm. I now have the core tension of how do you develop responsibility in your children? Are our kids too soft? And now 3, this is a really fun part. This is the what if scenario. This is where I like to begin to think about the cinematography. And this is where I come to a place like Frameset where I'll go to the main page and I begin to think, what if I approach this with a different cinematic perspective? What if I only shot it with locked off cameras? What if I shot it all super slow motion like the Samsung ad here? This is where I go to this page and I begin writing these down. There's no bad ideas. It does not mean you're committing to them. It doesn't matter how cliche or how common you see it. Like this image right here, I think, what if I'm gonna add that to Nikon Farm. What if I just shot only skies for this? Bad idea, but it begins to make you think about changing your perspective on this. Because if you have an interesting location and people, and then you have an interesting core question and tension, and then you have an interesting cinematic perspective on that, you will have a strong idea and it will help you separate your work from everyone else's. As you could tell, I'm just so passionate about this because I'm just so sad watching people pick up their camera and just hope for the best, because that was me for many years of my career until I realized that there is something called storytelling. And storytelling is just put down into one word, and that's desire. What does your film want? What does your character need? What is the question? Anyways, getting back to this, I'll start with Frameset. I'll come in here and I'll begin just building images. In the case of my project, I actually just typed in farm, and this is where I began building my image sets. And then when I come over here, I can show you what I actually collected. Began going through the whole collection of images, and obviously I noticed that I really love wide shots, and I began finding that there was a lot of interesting images from these different projects of people's hands on the farm. And that began to get me thinking. If we're talking about kids being soft, their hands are really new. What do those little tiny hands do? Do they do work? And having already spoken to my friend Ben about his farm and his kids, those kids work hard. And what's so great with Frameset is I can quickly come here and just do similar search. So if I like that shot of the hand and I like that it's daytime, I can begin coming through here and just adding more shots of these hands. And that can begin to build a cinematic texture for the overall film. And I hope if you go watch it, you can see that there is a distinct cinematic approach to this. And it was very much inspired by a lot of the stuff that I found here, including one project in particular called Dyed in the Wool. Highly recommend you go watch this. It's beautiful work by Tucker Bliss and a cinematographer I've worked with, Anthony Corella. So we observe, we find the core theme, and then we build what ifs. What if I shot this only from my character's perspectives? Or what if we never had any sound design, it was just music? Or what if it was only sound design? Having a few of those what ifs helps you begin to get to stage number 4, which is your rules. You need to create rules for your project. This essentially creates a border around your approach. What do I mean by rules? They sound restrictive and sound less creative, but they aren't. They will help you create a more distinct piece. If you don't have any rules, you're gonna fly a drone and fly however you want. You're gonna grab a gimbal and run around all day. You're gonna be doing handheld, locked off, and then also doing above shots. And then in the end, it's just gonna feel like a montage, which we see time and time again on Instagram. What you want is to come up with some restrictions for your project, because this will create style. And if you haven't developed your own style, rules will be the quickest way for you to begin to hone on this. I meet with cinematographers like Sam McCurdy all the time, and all the way up to the top cinematographers in Hollywood, they use rules on their cinematography.
Although it may not seem it at first, but I'm a huge advocate of rules.
You talk to Sam with Shogun, they try to only shoot with one camera, they try to show the room as wide as possible, as many times as they can in a scene, and then they only light from one side. There is no bounce lighting in that show and no backlighting. There's some rules, and it's why people always go, yeah, I really like the Shogun rule, oh look, or sometimes they say, hey, I don't like the Shogun look. So I'll talk quickly about the rules that I use in the Nikon piece. Again, it was these hands, and that's where I began to decide that I want to only shoot close-ups of the kids' hands. One of the rules I thought I might try for this project too was that it would be narrated by their voices only, and I tried that, and I had a backup plan with the Dr. Amen voiceover just in case that didn't work, which was very strong and was directly correlated to the themes that I was exploring.
You want kids to make mistakes, so they learn agency.
And what's great too is once I have all of this, I can begin to categorize the actual different shots inside this project. So I'll just come up to here and I'll do a new subset. And so let's do hands close up, create that, that'll pop up there. So as I'm working through and I'm adding shots, I can begin adding these close-up hands into this folder here. This shot definitely inspired one of the moments in the film you can see here. That's definitely the vibe I want to go for. You can definitely see I tried to recreate this shot. One thing I did discover from my Frameset catalog here was that I liked the idea of hiding the kids' faces, and one way to do that was in big, wide silhouettes. Or in the case of a shot like this, we don't see her face so well. So there were some moments like on the tractor here where I could obscure the kid's face or put them in the corner of the vignette so that it, again, was about their hands. It was about protecting their innocence, but was showing that they'll still do hard work. And if you're interested in Frameset, like I mentioned, they did sponsor this video. It's a product that I love to use. I actually reached out to them and said, hey, do you want to sponsor this video? Because I've been using you guys so much on this project. Felt like a no-brainer. And so you can go down below. I put a little discount code. You can actually get up to 10 searches a day for free on Frameset. But if you want that unlimited ability, which for me is kind of what you would want because you want to be able to get into a flow state with your creativity, they do have really affordable subscriptions so that you can jump in and use this on various projects. And I love it. They actually have a ton of motion as well as stills. So it's a great place for you to begin to build your project. And I have a whole video that I'll link down below that I showed how I shot list and create an edit before I ever go to set. And I'll mention also with Framesets, now they have a lot of team collaboration abilities. So you can create people to just be a viewer or an editor on a project. So this way you can send this to other people on your team. They can add their thoughts, or they can just observe kind of the pitch deck or the creative mood board that you've come up with and understand what your creative vision is. I love my Frameset mood boards because it's a place I come back to and I can begin to see my film before it's ever started and see a variety of different approaches at that subject and really begin to hone in on how I'm going to make it my own. Now, finally, if you've made it this far, there's one last stage to creating a good idea, and that's that you should be able to pitch it in 30 seconds or less. If you can't explain your idea both in the visual concept, but most importantly in its theme and core question, then you are at risk of creating nothing. It's not that you won't finish the project, you're just gonna create something that doesn't have a core concept. So practice this. Try to tell the person in 30 seconds, this is a project about children on a farm. We're never going to see their parents in the shot. We're gonna watch them doing hard work. It's exploring the tension of how soft we've made our kids and how hard work makes them more confident and more responsible. I called up a lot of my friends in the film industry and I begin to pitch this idea to them and hear their reactions. This process is important because if it doesn't make sense, then you gotta go back to the beginning. You want to begin to observe what about this idea isn't working. Then you want to work through the theme. Is my theme and core idea clear? And then work through what are the what ifs? What if I changed my approach? What if now I actually added an adult's voice in? Come back and you rework that. And then you define the rules in your approach and then you go pitch it again. If you work through this process, you're going to be able to refine your idea down to a concept. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's definitely gonna be a longer one, but it's one that I'm very passionate about. And I really hope that you can take this process, make it your own, but most importantly, get out there and shoot something that's working through a question that you've been asking. Huge shout out to Frameset. Thank you for sponsoring this video and helping me make projects like this. There was no budget to go shoot Labor and Love, so these sponsor videos help me afford that, helps me be able to hire amazing filmmakers like Bryce from our AOD community to come out and shoot the BTS. And thank you for watching this. We'll see you on the next one. Let me know if you have any questions down below. Later.